and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're listening from in the world. My name is Jacqueline Dixon, and you're tuned in to the Ordinary People Show. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things, and we're broadcasting live from Toronto, Canada, powered by GBKM FM Network. We're live in studio this Saturday afternoon, and again practicing the rules of engagement right now, which means no engagement. So social distancing is first and foremost on our minds, as it always been here at the GBKM studios, and we hope that you as well are following the rules and suggestions as has been imposed by our provincial government state of emergency, so that we can all put this behind us sooner rather than later. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the Ordinary People Show today. I'm your host, Jacqueline Dixon, and I want to start off really quickly today. I want to get right into the conversation with our guest, which is waiting in the wings right now. He'll be on right after our first commercial break. For those of you who follow me on social media, you know what's up. You know Jacqueline always wants to get down to the nitty-gritty. I like to peel away the layers and find out what's happening within our political system. I want to talk to the decision makers, and I believe in holding them accountable, but I also believe in giving them the opportunity to share with us what they're up to, their initiatives, and some of the projects in which case they might be involved with, and of course the current state of the union right now, or the current state of situation in the province of Ontario, is the fact that we are in a state of emergency, and we need to know right from the decision makers what is the plan. So we have waiting for us right after our first commercial break. Our guest and friend to GBKM Studios is the MPP for Humber River Black Creek, which is Mr. Tom Rakocevic. And he's a great friend to GBKM TV. He is the representative for Humber River Black Creek, and he's doing an outstanding job, and we want to have him share with you as much information as he possibly can as to what's happening at Queen's Park, and the official opposition's position in regards to any decision making that the current PC government run by Mr. Doug Ford is currently involved with. And we're going to get to that as soon as we come back from our first commercial break. But before we take our first commercial break, of course, I want to, start with our pleasantries, as we always do. First of all, we want to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in, as you always do. Thank you so much for your support over the years. And thank you for telling a friend to tell a friend as we grow our network. And especially in these particular times, make sure that you like and share this video for those of you who are watching it live. And for those who are watching it on demand, do the same as well. Like and share. Give us your comments as well. We always pay attention to your thoughts, and we try to endeavor to give as much feedback as we possibly can in our responses to you. Don't forget, GBKM FM is a 24-hour web radio, so we provide the best web radio music. We have genres such as Afrobeats, reggae, hip-hop, R&B, old school, and so much more. When you're not watching any of our live programs, please enjoy the music at www.gbkm.fm. You can also see us on our YouTube channel for any live shows that are running. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube so you can be updated and informed whenever we go live. And of course, our Facebook listeners and viewers, again, like and share the video, like our Facebook page, so that you, again, can be alerted whenever we go live. We want to thank Blue Flame Heating, Cooling, and Mechanical for being our #1 longest running sponsor for the Ordinary People Show. Blue Flame Heating, Cooling, and Mechanical provides all of your heating and cooling needs, and they're located right here in the GTA. They are considered an essential service, so don't be concerned. Give them a call if you have any issues with your hot water tank, your furnace, your air conditioner, and any gas fitting needs. They provide 24-hour service, 24-hour service 7 days a week. You can give them a call at 647-881-5600. 5111. Ask for the CEO, Mr. Neville Hall, and don't forget to tell him that you heard about him on the Ordinary People Show so that you can receive your additional 10% in discounts. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with today's interview. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come right back because we want to talk about Doug Ford and versus the healthcare workers in Ontario. And our guest is MPP, Mr. Tom Rakocevic, member of Provincial Parliament for Humber River Black Creek. We'll be right back right after this break.
As the world fights this coronavirus, we are standing together as a family.
My name is Kelly. I'm a fan of GBKM.
My name is Pastor Clement Omozane.
I'm Medea, your red carpet host.
I am your host, Ellen Roxon, for the show Talk That Talk here on GBKM FM.
I'm a mother and a teacher. I stand with everyone at this time.
And my name is OJ Egogo, co-host of the King's Domain.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Veloides, the host of The Chat Up Show on GBKM.
My name is Kenny Bazwai, President and CEO, GBKM FM and TV. We stand with all the community affected by this pandemic.
As the world fights this coronavirus, we are...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, and welcome back to the Ordinary People Show. So glad to be with you again today in studio. And I'm so blessed and so happy that I'm healthy. And I'm healthy because I'm practicing all of the social distancing rules by ensuring that I'm not engaging in any activities outside of my home unless it's an emergency or a necessity reason, such as grocery or for medical reasons. And again, the Ordinary People Show broadcasts from via satellite now. We do not have any guests attend our studios for safety reasons, of course. And this is what the new norm is right now until the state of the emergency is lifted. These are the rules that we must all comply with in order to get through this as quickly as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, I'm so excited to have, is a friend of GBKM, and I say that because GBKM is located in the heart of the Humber River Black Creek community. We are known as the mouthpiece of the community. That means we get out everywhere we possibly can to bring you news unfiltered from the grassroots community about all of the happenings within the Humber River Black Creek. And who better to have discuss what is happening within the Humber River Black Creek community than our MPP, Mr. Tom Rakocevic. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Tom to the Ordinary People Show. Good morning, Tom. Welcome.
Good morning, Jacqueline. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. My goodness, it's great to hear you. It's great to see you.
You too.
It's always good to have you, pop in. And even though we're popping in virtually today, it's good to have you. As it's interesting as we chat right now. The last thing I remember, Tom, I'm thinking even about doing a post that says what's the last thing you remember? The last thing I remember, we were celebrating Black History Month at the Jamaican Canadian Centre.
Yep.
It was a great event, great turnout, and now look what we're facing. Wow. So, Tom, now that you're here with us, we've got your undivided attention for at least for this portion of the day. Let's talk about some of the hot topics that are a concern to the residents of Ontario right now. On March the 17th, the provincial government, led by Mr. Doug Ford, declared a state of emergency, therefore literally shutting down the province of Ontario to everybody that did not belong to an essential business or operating an essential business as deemed by the Ontario government. So the first question to you is, Tom, the NDP is the official opposition in Ontario right now. We want to know, did the NDP play a role at all in this decision-making process of deciding on the state of emergency? And if so, did you also play a role in deciding what is considered to be essential and what is not?
Thank you so much for the question. So most definitely the opposition, even before March 17th, when we were all hearing news of this pandemic and that it had reached Ontario, Canada, we were pushing this government. First of all, you may remember, your listeners may remember the removal of sick days, for instance. So we had emergency legislation ready to go on the table to say that we should not be providing barriers of keeping people, making people go into work if they're sick. This is pre-social isolation. We were pushing the government very openly to say, follow the rules, follow the advice of medical experts, the health experts, who are ultimately the ones that are deciding what isn't essential. And so this was something that the opposition was strongly pushing in many different areas, ensuring frontline health workers were prepared, that they had the inventories they needed, the personal gear to protect their patients, themselves, their families. So there was a lot of work on our part pushing this government.
Hello and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're listening from in the world. My name is Jacqueline Dixon, and you're tuned in to the Ordinary People Show. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things, and we're broadcasting live from Toronto, Canada, powered by GBKM FM Network. We're live in studio this Saturday afternoon, and again practicing the rules of engagement right now, which means no engagement. So social distancing is first and foremost on our minds, as it always been here at the GBKM studios, and we hope that you as well are following the rules and suggestions as has been imposed by our provincial government state of emergency, so that we can all put this behind us sooner rather than later. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the Ordinary People Show today. I'm your host, Jacqueline Dixon, and I want to start off really quickly today. I want to get right into the conversation with our guest, which is waiting in the wings right now. He'll be on right after our first commercial break. For those of you who follow me on social media, you know what's up. You know Jacqueline always wants to get down to the nitty-gritty. I like to peel away the layers and find out what's happening within our political system. I want to talk to the decision makers, and I believe in holding them accountable, but I also believe in giving them the opportunity to share with us what they're up to, their initiatives, and some of the projects in which case they might be involved with, and of course the current state of the union right now, or the current state of situation in the province of Ontario, is the fact that we are in a state of emergency, and we need to know right from the decision makers what is the plan. So we have waiting for us right after our first commercial break, our guest and friend to GBKM Studios is the MPP for Humber River Black Creek, which is Mr. Tom Rakocevic. And he's a great friend to GBKM TV. He is the representative for Humber River Black Creek, and he's doing an outstanding job, and we want to have him share with you as much information as he possibly can as to what's happening at Queen's Park and the official opposition's position in regards to any decision making that the current PC government run by Mr. Doug Ford is currently involved with. And we're going to get to that as soon as we come back from our first commercial break. But before we take our first commercial break, of course, I want to, start with our pleasantries, as we always do. First of all, we want to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in, as you always do. Thank you so much for your support over the years. And thank you for telling a friend to tell a friend as we grow our network. And especially in these particular times, make sure that you like and share this video for those of you who are watching it live. And for those who are watching it on demand, do the same as well. Like and share. Give us your comments as well. We always pay attention to your thoughts, and we try to endeavor to give as much feedback as we possibly can in our responses to you. Don't forget, GBKM FM is a 24-hour web radio, so we provide the best web radio music. We have genres such as Afrobeats, reggae, hip-hop, R&B, old school, and so much more. When you're not watching any of our live programs, please enjoy the music at www.gbkm.fm. You can also see us on our YouTube channel for any live shows that are running. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube so you can be updated and informed whenever we go live. And of course, our Facebook listeners and viewers, again, like and share the video, like our Facebook page so that you, again, can be alerted whenever we go live. We want to thank Blue Flame Heating, Cooling, and Mechanical for being our #1 longest running sponsor for the Ordinary People Show. Blue Flame Heating, Cooling, and Mechanical provides all of your heating and cooling needs, and they're located right here in the GTA. They are considered an essential service, so don't be concerned. Give them a call if you have any issues with your hot water tank, your furnace, your air conditioner, and any gas fitting needs. They provide 24-hour service, 24-hour service 7 days a week. You can give them a call at 647-881-5111. Ask for the CEO, Mr. Neville Hall, and don't forget to tell him that you heard about him on the Ordinary People Show so that you can receive your additional 10% in discounts. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with today's interview. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come right back because we want to talk about Doug Ford and versus the healthcare workers in Ontario. And our guest is MPP, Mr. Tom Rakocevic, member of Provincial Parliament for Humber River Black Creek. We'll be right back right after this break.
As the world fights this coronavirus, we are standing together as a family.
My name is Kemi. I'm a fan of GBKM.
My name is Pastor Clement Omozane.
I'm Medea, your red carpet host.
I am your host, Ellen Roxon, for the show Talk That Talk here on GBKM FM.
I'm a mother and a teacher. I stand with everyone at this time.
And my name is OJ Egobo, co-host of the King's Domain.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Veloides, the host of the Chat Up Show on GBKM.
My name is Kenny Bazwai, President and CEO, GBKM FM and TV. We stand with all the community affected by this pandemic.
As the world fights this coronavirus, we are
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, and welcome back to the Ordinary People Show. So glad to be with you again today in studio. And I'm so blessed and so happy that I'm healthy. And I'm healthy because I'm practicing all of the social distancing rules by ensuring that I'm not engaging in any activities outside of my home unless it's an emergency or a necessity reason, such as grocery or for medical reasons. And again, the Ordinary People Show broadcasts from via satellite now. We do not have any guests attend our studios for safety reasons, of course. And this is what the new norm is right now until the state of the emergency is lifted. These are the rules that we must all comply with in order to get through this as quickly as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, I'm so excited to have, is a friend of GBKM, and I say that because GBKM is located in the heart of the Humber River Black Creek community. We are known as the mouthpiece of the community. That means we get out everywhere we possibly can to bring you news unfiltered from the grassroots community about all of the happenings within the Humber River Black Creek. And who better to have discussed what is happening within the Humber River Black Creek community than our MPP, Mr. Tom Rakocevic. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Tom to the Ordinary People Show. Good morning, Tom. Welcome.
Good morning, Jacqueline. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. My goodness, it's great to hear you. It's great to see you.
You too.
It's always good to have you, pop in. And even though we're popping in virtually today, it's good to have you. As it's interesting as, we chat right now, the last thing I remember, Tom, I'm thinking even about doing a post that says, what's the last thing you remember? the last thing I remember, we were celebrating Black History Month at the Jamaican Canadian Centre.
Yep.
It was a great event, great turnout, and now look what we're facing. Wow. So, Tom, now that you're here with us, we've got your undivided attention for at least for this portion of the day. Let's talk about some of the hot topics that are a concern to the residents of Ontario right now. On March the 17th, the provincial government, led by Mr. Doug Ford, declared a state of emergency, therefore virtually, literally shutting down the province of Ontario to everybody that did not belong to an essential business or operating an essential business as deemed by the Ontario government. So the first question to you is, Tom, the NDP is the official opposition in Ontario right now. We want to know, did the NDP play a role at all in this decision-making process of deciding on the state of emergency? And if so, did you also play a role in deciding what is considered to be essential and what is not?
Thank you so much for the question. So most definitely the opposition, even before March 17th, when we were all hearing news of this pandemic and that it had reached Ontario, Canada, we were pushing this government. First of all, you may remember, your listeners may remember the removal of sick days, for instance. So we had emergency legislation ready to go on the table to say that we should not be providing barriers of keeping people, making people go into work if they're sick. This is pre-social isolation. We were pushing the government very openly to say, follow the rules, follow the advice of medical experts, the health experts, who are ultimately the ones that are deciding what isn't essential. And so this was something that the opposition was strongly pushing in many different areas, ensuring frontline health workers were prepared, that they had the inventories they needed, the personal gear to protect their patients, themselves, their families. So there was a lot of work on our part pushing this government to do everything they could to protect people in this province during the pandemic.
Okay, so then you are confirming that NDP did play a very active role in that decision-making process of determining that we were in a situation where it was necessary to call for a state of emergency.
We were definitely saying yes, support the ideas and the rules being set forth and the advice by medical experts. That's who we should be listening to, and that's definitely something we were saying. And for instance, right early on, when we've met, legislature has met a few times during this period of social isolation. I remember on the first time I was there to vote, we all followed rules just like GBKM is doing to ensure that we're all keeping each other safe. And we were, I was able to vote, for instance, on legislation that would ensure that grocers and other people are able to remain stocked, working after hours, making all the necessary changes to be able to do what's necessary to keep people protected during the pandemic. So definitely we've been in our seats voting, and we've been a voice at the table saying, follow the advice of medical experts. We must keep our communities safe at all costs.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you for that. So let's talk about the healthcare workers and frontline workers that are considered to be essential. Maybe you can help us define that. One of the things that I pride my show about delivering is education. Our mantra here is educate, inspire, and empower. And for our listeners and viewers who are not familiar with the categorization that is currently in place right now for frontline workers, maybe you can help us to kind of define that, because there seems to be some belief that PSWs or nurses assistants were not a part of that category in the early onset of when the pandemic started to explode. And it's only really since recently, when we've had some issues where we've had two healthcare workers pass away, that they've been getting the attention. Is there any, can you speak to that at all?
Certainly from my perspective, certainly from the perspective of the NDP and the opposition, that PSWs are certainly very, very important frontline healthcare workers. We've been pushing for their needs and to protect them and to give them the gear they need, the respect they need, the hours they need, the financial support they need to be able to do their jobs. They are so important to all of us. They're so important, especially who are vulnerable, for instance, in long-term care. They're there taking care of them on a day-to-day basis. Their work is difficult, and we must be supporting them at all costs. So from our perspective, from the perspective of the NDP and the opposition, PSWs are so important, and they are healthcare workers, absolutely, and they've always been in our conversations with the government.
Wonderful. So here's the question, though. So then why do you believe there has been just this rapid outbreak within our long-term care facilities that is not taking place within our hospitals, for example? If they're in the same category as far as frontline workers are concerned, then why are we not seeing the same type of outbreak in our hospitals that we're seeing in our long-term care? What could possibly be contributing to the outbreak, if anything at all?
You know, from the beginning, we've been hearing from PSWs working in long-term care facilities about instances of rationing of equipment, for instance. So if you're a PSW and you are there working in this residence, taking care of many different vulnerable seniors and individuals, and you're given, say, one mask for a day, that's not. We need more. They need the proper equipment. They need. From the beginning, they should have been, if you were working in a particular long-term care facility, that's where you were going to go, not multiple ones. So they needed support from the get-go from this government, and this is something that the opposition was pushing from not even day one, before day one.
Okay, so this is that's a very good segue right there. So now it's come to our attention that quite a few frontline workers, specifically the PSWs, their functions, when their position required them to visit multiple long-term care facilities. They were not stationary like most nurses, RNs are, and doctors are, and as a result of that, traveling through as many as 2 or 3 different facilities in the course of 1 or 2 weeks, that helped to spread the disease further. Could that be? Is there any truth to that?
Certainly, you know, what we were asking for is to ensure that, you know, PSWs are working at one facility, that they're working adequate hours, they're being financially compensated adequately, and that above all, they have the gear necessary to protect themselves, to protect the people they are helping, and certainly to protect their families.
So has that come to an end now? Are they no longer traveling from nursing home to nursing home? You've created a situation now where they can stay stationary and reduce the spread of the disease?
So I've been talking to the union representing PSWs, and to my knowledge, that at least in the cases I've heard, that's what's occurring right now. Again, this is my own personal questions that I've asked, but I have still been hearing some instances surrounding equipment and rationing, and this is very, very concerning, and we're continuing to say that this cannot be happening. We have to provide adequate gear to our frontline health workers so that they can protect the people they're taking care of, to protect themselves, and to protect their families.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, we also know that a lot of the frontline workers, I mean, we've heard the Premier on many occasions talk about how sympathetic he is towards what they're going through. And it's one thing to say that you're sympathetic, but it's another thing to act sympathetic. And the first, in my personal opinion, and again, it's just an opinion, the first real act that I saw of sympathy towards these individuals was when the government decided to increase their rate of pay by $4 per hour. Can you explain to us about that program, how it works, when and why it was implemented, and what you feel the outcome should be?
Thank you for that. Yeah, no, most definitely this is something we were pushing for, and So first of all, even pre-COVID, when you look at what PSWs and a lot of our frontline workers who are taking care of our most vulnerable in society, are they adequately compensated pre-COVID? I don't believe that. And certainly during COVID, during these difficult times, they're being asked to come in, work very long hours, and to do everything they can to help our most vulnerable. And so certainly they should be compensated for that. So there has been an increase to their pay, but we've certainly been pushing for that for some time.
Okay, wonderful. And that has been put in place, and they're currently receiving the benefits of that as we speak. Okay.
Right.
Now, if you can just speak a little to that compensation, in the sense that I know some workers or some individuals, some of my listeners and viewers, we're not exactly sure sometimes where the responsibility for provincial responsibility ends and federal responsibilities start. So maybe if you can speak to that a little bit for us, so that we can get to better understand where the buck stops versus the feds when it comes to protective gear and for compensation or funding the frontline workers.
So ultimately, the funding in that, with that regard, is provincial, but all levels of government have the ability to provide support in the ways that they see fit. Certainly, the issues around gear would be provincial, but then there's always elements too, to some degree, I guess, federally, because when you think about if gear has to come in from another place, if it's not necessarily available in Ontario, there might be some overlay between that. But certainly from the perspective of the NDP opposition, we had been sounding the horn on this way before we went to social isolation that we're doing today, is to ensure that everybody has the adequate gear they need, to ensure that we have the protective supplies here in Ontario to protect our frontline workers, to protect everybody here in this province.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a shortage? Is there a shortage right now of frontline workers? The rumor is that they're looking. We have a shortage, and that the government is looking to hire or bring people out of retirement. Can you speak to that at all?
So first of all, in the case of, I can say that for those who, I think a lot of your listeners are within the catchment area of Humber River Hospital, and I did a telephone town hall where we had a Dr. Jacobs from the hospital, who, and I was glad to hear, said that they have adequate supplies within the hospital for the foreseeable future, so that was very good news. And with regards to workers, again, there was a nurse living in our community, an emergency ER nurse, who had experience in the States, who was just waiting to get her license here, and she said that she wanted to make sure that if there was a need, she would be available. And so I know she was able to sign up on a list that if it comes to that, she would be available to bring her expertise. So there are plans in place to be able to reach out to more healthcare workers in cases that need.
Okay, well, that's great news then. So for those healthcare workers that might be listening, that maybe are in retirement right now, or maybe they're still in school, maybe I don't know that they would qualify. The government is prepared to take your name and put you on some sort of waiting list in the event that they might need to call on you. Is this what I'm hearing? Is there anywhere that they can go to sign up to take part in any? So
the details I had were people that were basically looking at obtaining their license imminently, or just come out of education, I believe, here in the province. I don't want to say the exact letter of the details, because I want to be as accurate as possible.
Okay.
But if your listeners ever want to reach out to my office, if, as you suggested, they're there, we could certainly send them via email any information that they can see if it's something they're willing or able to take part in.
That's great news. Thank you so much for that, Tom. And we'll make sure that they reach out to you in the event that they would like to participate in that area.
Can I just want to say this one thing, because I don't want to be remiss and not mention this. It's not just her, but so many people within our community have shown such a spirit of love and generosity towards one another. Individuals making donations to local food banks, calling on vulnerable neighbors, members of their own community to check up on them. We're all united in this, in facing this illness together. And so for all the listeners, even if you're just staying home and you're participating in social isolation, we're all doing our part to fight this together. So I just want to make sure to mention that as well, because it's not, certainly our healthcare workers are heroes, our essential workers, people even stocking grocery shelves, but every single one of us are part of this.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So, Tom, moving on now, let's just wrap up the healthcare questions first. So, how many hospitals are within the Humber River Black Creek district? How many hospitals do we have that to take care of? I think it's 120,000 residents, if I'm correct. Maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, it's just over 100,000, and our hospital, our main hospital is Humber River Hospital. It's a new state-of-the-art hospital located at Keele and Wilson, Keele and the 401. And so this is our hospital that is closest to us if there's any need, right? That's our community hospital.
Okay, and is that also a testing facility?
There is a testing facility that's located at the old Humber River Hospital site, located west of Jane and Finch. There are a number of them throughout the province, but it's not a testing site, to my knowledge, where you just go in. There are rules, to contact telehealth if you believe you have symptoms, and they'll direct you to where you need to go to get tested.
Okay, so that's very important information that we need to share. So there is a process in place that has to take place prior to you showing up at a hospital. The step one is to call telehealth. Am I correct? You can't just simply walk into the hospital and say, "Hey, I'd like to get tested for COVID." What's the process?
So the way that my understanding through public health is that if you are experiencing specific symptoms, then you would contact telehealth, and then they would give you all the information you need to keep you safe and whether and where to go if you need to be tested.
Okay, all right, good. And maybe what we can do is I'll get my producer to help me provide that telephone number before we wrap up today's show. So they would tell you what to do in order to be tested, and they would tell you where the nearest testing facility is. But based on what you're saying to me, we know for sure we have 2 testing facilities in the Humber River Black Creek.
No, what I'm saying is that our local hospital is Humber River Hospital, located at Keele and 401, or Keele and Wilson.
Yes.
That the old site, the hospital that's most close to Jane and Finch, just west of Jane and Finch.
Finch and 400.
That's right, the Finch and 400, the old Humber River Hospital site. There is a testing facility there. So I'm just calling it that because that's what people in our community would know it. That used to be Humber River for me growing up, right?
Right.
So there's a testing facility there, but people should be contacting telehealth and get the information for them on what next steps are.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. Tom, let's move on now. Listen, we've been locked up for quite some time, as you know. I know that you're a great person for to set examples. One of the things that you do in your position is you lead by example. I've seen you out in the community. You keep very close contact with the grassroots community here in the Humber River Black Creek. On any given Saturday, sometimes in the summertime, you're out in the plazas passing out flyers, talking to everyday people, and that's what makes you so approachable for a lot of the residents, and I'm sure probably that's one of the reasons why you experienced the victory that you did. But things are changed now. Everyone's all locked up. People are getting antsy. We're getting cabin fever. The sun is starting to peak, and the weather's the temperature is starting to increase. We need to be able to see the finish line at some point here, and we're not getting any level of confidence coming back from the daily briefings by the Premier based on the statistics that he's providing. And I'm trying to get an understanding as to why we have been isolated for as long as we have, but yet still the numbers keep on climbing. Can you share with us at all why you believe that is the case, because there are a number of people within the community that are starting to lose confidence.
From the beginning, I followed the advice of the experts, the medical experts, the people who have been trained in this. This is what they know. This is what they do every day, and their job is to protect us. And they're the ones that are, setting out the rules of what the social isolation should look like, defining what is and isn't essential. And when they're saying here that this is what we need to be doing, I think we have to follow what the experts are saying.
No one's disagreeing with that. I would certainly I agree with you there. But what we're trying to understand is that with the information that's been shared, and assuming that I believe that the vast majority of the population is following the rules, would you agree? Do you believe that the vast majority of us are or are not?
I certainly believe that, and I believe that it's showing. If Ontarians, and I thank the people in my community, and I thank people everywhere, if we weren't following the instructions laid out by our health experts to protect ourselves, we would be in a very different situation, and which is why I was thanking everybody for their part in it. Certainly, especially at the beginning, when we went into these new social isolation rules, I had sent out a number of voice messages to the community to try to encourage people to listen to our medical experts and to really take care of one another, protect one another by doing that. I can't speculate very specifically. Those are more questions, I think, for doctors or whatnot, which was why when I did a telephone town hall, I had Dr. Jacobs from Humber River Hospital to get into the very specifics. But what I'm hearing from them is that we need to continue to listen to what the rules are laying out. And so far, we're doing our best to flatten the curve. And that's thanks to every single person, all of your listeners and all of us.
Right. I know that we certainly are doing our part, and from what I understand, the people within my social circle, they're doing their part. But I'm a little bit concerned, and I'm hearing some grumbling from the community that we are, when I say we, the general population, which are, the primarily healthy individuals who go to work on a day-to-day basis, who can no longer go to work and no longer socialize, are being held somewhat hostage in their homes because the statistics that are being reported, they involve the statistics also from the long care term facilities, and those numbers are climbing. And because those numbers are climbing, it's making it appear as if the general population is not complying. Should we be reporting the long-term care facilities statistics separately from the general population, or is that too harsh?
I mean, more data, more information is always something that's useful. Certainly, the NDP have been calling, for instance, for demographic and race-based data to be made available. This is something we've been pushing from the beginning. But vulnerable people aren't just people living in long-term care. They are our parents. They are our grandparents that might be living at home or in an apartment. There are our neighbors. There are our uncles. There are our aunts. There are individuals who are our friends that may have a pre-existing condition. Maybe they have asthma. There's so many different people who are vulnerable. So I think it's very important that we follow the rules that are being laid out by our healthcare experts, and that's to protect one another.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned race-based data. That seems to be a growing concern more and more, especially based on what we hear coming out of the United States in regards to the percentage of African Americans and Latinos which have disproportionately passed away from this disease more so than their Caucasian counterparts. So now, though, there is a request for race-based data to get collected here in Ontario, maybe even nationwide. What's the current situation with that request, and who has made that request, and who is fulfilling it, if anybody at all?
Okay, well, thank you for that. Certainly the opposition, the NDP opposition, have been making that request for some time now, saying that it's very important we get all the data we can, certainly around demographic and race-based data. The Premier hasn't agreed with that. The government hasn't moved in that direction, although I want to thank the City of Toronto and their medical officer of health for, I believe, as early as last week, beginning to collect that data. Each person is affected. We're all living millions of unique lives here in Ontario, and our experiences are certainly different. But if you're someone that is relatively wealthy, privileged enough to be able to work from home, or you're a tenant from a marginalized community living, perhaps maybe you've lost your work, maybe you've been laid off as a result of COVID, your experiences are going to be dramatically different. If you're that family is now you're a high school daughter or son is now at home, but you have internet, you have a tablet, you're able to continue to learn and follow the curriculum, versus a tenant who's now lost their job and their child, they don't have even internet at home, they don't have a tablet. These are two different lives. So being able to determine the data that's out there on how we must provide supports depending on need, I think is crucial. The Black Chamber of Commerce has called on a dedicated fund for communities that have faced historical barriers to receive dedicated funding, especially during these hard times. This is something that the NDP agrees with. The needs are different. No two persons' needs are the same, and we must support those among us that have the highest needs.
Thank you so much. Tom, I'll tell you something. I can't say that I'm not impressed. I certainly am impressed with our government overall, from all levels. From city councillor, provincial, and federal. I'm a very, very proud Canadian right now. But there are still holes, there are still cracks, and people are slipping through these cracks. And some of the people that are slipping through these cracks are ethnic communities, the ethnic small business person. They don't seem to fit the profile for any of these government funds that are being offered. And every time our Prime Minister goes in his home and opens that door and comes back out, there's another $10 billion that's being offered. And people like small business outfits, similar to GBKM and another small business organizations are slipping through the cracks. They just don't fit the profile for the government funds that are being offered. And, what can be done, if anything, about that? When we see our federal government create funds specifically for the Indigenous community, do you believe that the ethnic communities, specifically the Black community, would be in line to get specific funding as well?
Just like I said, the Black Chamber of Commerce made that exact point in the case of businesses. And this is something that the NDP certainly supported. Absolutely.
Is that from a federal level or a provincial level?
This is something that's provincial, but that level of support, I think, could be provided by any level of government as well, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, certainly I've been hearing from local nonprofits. So for instance, we have a number of incredible nonprofits operating in the Jane and Finch area that provide, for instance, a social environment for seniors to come get a warm meal, speak to one another. And of course, under the new rules, they're not able to do that. So a lot of them have gone ahead and are delivering meals or, food banks that are bringing food to people or whatnot. And so the funding requirements or their needs, certainly pre-COVID and post-COVID, are different.
Okay. All right.
So there's certainly a call for that in many different communities as well. Absolutely. It's a very good point that you bring up. And I think this is something that the government should be listening very carefully to and providing the support as needed. And in terms of small businesses, right now, the way that it's unfolded is that, let's say if you have a small business, it's up to the landlord to opt into these programs. The NDP have a dedicated Save Main Street plan dedicated at small businesses that would provide direct support of up to 75% of their rent, for instance, and whatnot, directly to those businesses, not requiring, in those cases, landlords to have to opt in. So definitely there are things that we've been really pushing the government not to forget small businesses. They are the cornerstone of Ontario. They're our bread and butter, and we have to support them during these difficult times, because a lot of these businesses who are suffering right now, if some of them may not open. And so we need to support them now so that when we come out of this, they're able to hit the ground running.
That's so true. Thank you so much for that. I'll tell you, Tom, yesterday I had to go leave my home for the first time for the week to get some groceries. And I was just driving around the neighborhood, and I can already see for lease, for sale, for lease, for sale. It's starting to pop up already. And I can imagine that your hands are going to be full when this is all said and done. And people are going to need some help. People need help right now. But especially in a community like the Humber River Black Creek, where things are, where it's, it's heavily, it is the most ethnically mixed community demographically for the province, my understanding. So it has the most amount of diversity in it. And for the small business people in this community to suffer the way that some of them are right now, it's a good chance that some of them are just not going to make it out of this situation. And I don't know what plans you have to help, but I do know that our ears are wide open and we're ready to listen.
Thank you for that. We agree. The NDP opposition, my colleagues have been saying this every day, and we're pushing this government to not leave people behind. Absolutely.
Okay, now let's turn to another subject before we take our first and last and only commercial break, and then we're going to wrap up. We're going to talk about car insurance. We're going to talk about the fact that the vast majority of people within Ontario are at home. They're not traveling with the exception of the essential workers, but our cars are parked. Gas is pretty cheap right now, although I believe it should be cheaper. Maybe, I don't know if you've got any insight on that one for me. But our cars are parked, and we're paying the same insurance premiums that we were paying when we were driving back and forth to work and commuting all about the place prior to state of emergency. So I want you to speak to that, but before you answer that, please, we're just going to take a quick 30-second commercial break, and we're going to come right back, and you can tell us about what the plans are, if anything, in regards to insurance premiums while we're locked up. Thank you so much. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
Whenever a client sits in that chair, I pretend they're part of my family. What would I do for my family if they were in this situation? I take it personally to make sure that I find the best possible avenue for them to succeed.
Sharma Singh Immigration Services. We have the expertise of former immigration officers who worked with the federal government of Canada for over 25 years.
If you do it with a pure heart, and if you do it with integrity and professionalism, you're sure to succeed.
Hello, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in today, and welcome back to the Ordinary People Show. My name is Jacqueline Dixon. I'm your host. We're in the studio today, broadcasting live, practicing our social distancing rules in the heart of the Humber River Black Creek. This is where the GBKM studios are located. This is our stomping grounds, and we're talking to our MPP for the Humber River Black Creek, which is the one and only Mr. Tom Rakocevic. He's been so generous to give us some of his time today to talk to his constituents, which is us and so many of the other listeners and viewers. Tom, prior to the commercial break, we were talking about car insurance. I brought up the topic of car insurance because, as you know, we're all, for the most part, parked at home waiting for Mr. Ford to announce that we can leave our homes again. But until then, our cars are parked and we're still paying hefty insurance premiums. Can you speak to us about any relief at all, or why should we even be paying car insurance if we're not going anywhere? Can you speak to that at all?
Absolutely, Jacqueline. In fact, the first time I was ever on your show, we spent a good deal talking about auto insurance. For the Jane and Finch community, for our community here in Humber River, Black Creek, Brampton, and a number of other, Scarborough, we pay some of the highest rates of auto insurance pre-COVID in the entire country, perhaps even in North America. And we've fought against postal code discrimination. We continue that fight. We continue to push the government to bring the relief that drivers deserve. And certainly, as you stated, just look out the window. There's less cars on the road. And we've heard from insurers, even from them, they've even conceded the point that accidents, driving, has been down by 50%. So certainly if the accidents are down, the claims are down, and obviously it's simple math, insurers are then paying out, and they are now then gaining a savings during COVID as a result of that. And so Ontario drivers who are already overpaying, drivers in our community deserve that relief, and that should be passed on to their customers, to us, everyday Ontario drivers. And so what we've been pushing, what I've been pushing, and the NDP opposition have been putting, has been pushing this government to say, tell the insurers a 50% immediate reduction in auto insurance. Don't leave it up to individual drivers to have to haggle with their insurance companies over a rebate. That may or may not come. I've heard individuals tell me that they're not getting anything. I've heard some that are saying they're getting $5 a month. I'm saying that I've heard individuals say, you know, my insurance company offered what's like fire and theft. It's something that you could always do. You leave your car parked. That's not anything different during COVID that you couldn't have applied for pre-COVID. And so what's happening is if accidents are down by that significant amount, then so those savings should be passed on to our drivers who are struggling. But while this was happening, I reached out to Toronto Police Services, their transportation division, and I had asked, I'd like to know what the specific details in Toronto. So, you know, you're breaking it here, breaking news in the sense that the number of accidents in Toronto, and I asked from the period of mid-March to mid-April of last year compared to this year, accidents are down, in fact, 75%.
75% for the GTA.
For Toronto.
For specifically Toronto.
Yes, because Toronto, you know, that was where I was able, for instance, to get the data from. So Toronto police are able to comment on Toronto where they're responsible for that.
Okay.
But this data is certainly available in other regions and other jurisdictions, and I would expect it would be similar numbers. And so the NDP have been calling for a plan to reduce premiums during this period of social isolation. Don't leave it up to drivers to have to negotiate with their insurers. We feel they're already overpaying.
Amazing. Tom, can I jump right in there for a quick second? That's just absolutely amazing. 75%. So let's just try to get your head around this now. So 75% reduction in the amount of accidents, therefore 75% reduction in the amount of payouts, and the insurance companies are collecting the same amount of premium, so they're profiting. This is a profit period for them. And what you're saying and the NDP are saying is that, listen, we recognize this, and we think that you should share in those savings that your business, your companies are getting by rebating back to the consumer a portion of those savings, at least a portion of it. So, so let me tell you about my personal experience. I had heard this talk about getting a potential reduction in insurance premiums, and I'm always one for trying to save. So I contacted my insurance company on my own, and I said to them, I've been told that it's very possible that I might be eligible for a reduction in insurance costs as a result of me not driving anymore and staying home. Well, I'll tell you honestly, it wasn't a welcome conversation on their part. They didn't look forward to the fact that I even put them in that position to have to address it. But they did go through a series of questions with me, and once the series of questions were done, they did do some recalculating for me, and they did reduce my premiums by 18%. So I got an 18% reduction. It was nice to see it reflected on my insurance withdrawal from my bank account. The next withdrawal period, it showed up, and it was nice. But it was 18%, and they're saving 75%. So as much as I feel good about it, I don't know. It doesn't really seem fair. I think I like your percentages much better.
And we're not even calling for a rebate. We're saying just reduce the rates. There's a couple of key points here. The auto insurance is regulated in Ontario, and the government has some say over rates. So we're telling the government to take action, not just talk, and provide that relief, pass on the savings that the insurers are seeing now with the reduction in accidents, pass those directly on to drivers. Every time you ask the questions and they come out, they say, well, look, we're paying out claims, but as you stated, if accidents are down 75%, then there are significantly less claims. Those savings need to be passed on to drivers, and it shouldn't be left for you and for everyone to have to haggle, negotiate with your own insurance companies. People are hearing all sorts of different things, and this is something that myself, the NDP opposition, has been pushing. We have been leaders in the fights for fair auto insurance in Ontario, and we've been pushing and pushing and pushing. I'm glad that you've been able to get something, but certainly you deserve more.
Thank you. And Tom, before we wrap up, we talked about so many initiatives that you're currently working on. But can you give us any sort of date or timeline as to when some of these will be brought to fruition? When are we going to see some results? Is it realistic to expect that we can see a province-wide reduction in insurance premiums this year? Can you speak to any of these with more specificity?
So what I can tell you is that since this government took office, the NDP have had two different bills. One was mine and one was from my colleague Ratan Singh, brother of Jagmeet Singh, around postal code discrimination. We'd worked together. He had a bill, so the NDP had an initial bill that talked about everybody within the GTA should be considered one postal code with respect to drivers. In fact, in the last session of government, Jagmeet Singh, when he was an MPP, the NDP leader had one to eliminate it altogether. I've had a bill that I put out there saying that insurers need to open their books and give us more information as to why they're doing what they're doing, that they shouldn't be able to charge excessive profit margins when Ontario drivers say that they're being gouged, and as well modernize their practices so that we could save money. This is something that we continue to push, but this government is a majority government, and they seem to be on the side of insurers over everyday drivers. So all that I can tell you is that we're going to continue to apply this pressure. The talk around auto insurance and premiums, certainly the opposition has pushed and started that talk. And so you're hearing about it in the news and it's going around. And at least you saw some small part, some savings, but we don't feel it's enough. I've just recently discovered that it's in fact up to 75%, and we need a reduction in accidents. And so insurers shouldn't be saving money. Like the money that they're saving during COVID needs to be passed on to Ontario drivers. They're the ones that deserve the relief. They're the ones that are overpaying. And so this government has the power to make it so, and they should get on it immediately.
Okay, well, keep that pressure on them, okay, Tom? We're
Definitely.
depending on you for that. And last
Thank
but
you.
not least, before we wrap up, Tom, if you had a crystal ball or any inside information, which we sure hope you do, can you tell us when do you see any possibility of us being able to lift the state of emergency? What's your guesstimate on the current situation?
Well, I think I've been at this long enough to know that my crystal ball is not it's not crystal clear. You know, I'm relying on the advice of medical experts, of our health experts. That's always what
you gotta have some sort of inclination. I mean, some provinces have started to lift already. And I might even have an issue with the fact that Mr. Ford is opening up the golf courses, and I'm trying to figure out how is that going to help anybody. But some provinces have started to lift. Do you think it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months?
I don't have the information to say that's
okay.
No. It's not about not having a clue. It's about that the situation changes on a day-to-day basis. We see testing, we see number of cases, and ultimately it's the health experts that are setting what needs to be happening, and that's who we need to be listening to. So I can't tell you what specifically can happen tomorrow. You know, this is a changing, fluid situation, and so whatever return to what it was before will be most likely a staggered approach. We're seeing some businesses being allowed to open now, which is happening in the very near future. But I don't have a crystal ball to be able to tell you specifically what's going to be happening with specific dates.
But the reality is that regardless of whenever that date gets announced, people are still going to be passing away. I think it's realistic to say that we're never going to get to the point where, I don't want to say never, or we're not, it's very unlikely that we're going to wait till we have a zero infection result before we open up. The model has got to look like something. What does the model look like? Does it look like less than 100? Does it look like less than 200? Do you follow what I'm saying?
No, I know what you're saying, but Jacqueline, what I have to tell you is that I have to defer to the health experts. My focus has been during this period of social isolation and based on their recommendations that we do this, that the government is providing the proper supports to tenants who might have been facing eviction, or to people that are out of work and they need the financial support they need, to small business owners that are struggling to pay rent, to marginalized communities, to drivers, to everybody, that people are getting the proper support. That has been all of my focus. In terms of predicting how this virus will, what it looks like tomorrow or in a week, that's something I leave to the medical experts. And all I can do is thank people for participating. I know GBKM is doing that. You said it right from the onset of the show. When I came in before, I sat right beside you. We did an interview. Yeah. And today I'm doing it from home. Yeah. And so we're all doing our part. I'm doing our part. I thank people for that. But my concern is keeping my community safe. Everyone, not just the vulnerable members, and giving our first responders, our essential workers, the tools they need to be able to protect us as well. And that's really where my focus is on. I remember when I was, it's always very important to have plans, and we're certainly telling the government to plan ahead, but I can't give you specific dates. We're listening to the advice of medical experts, and my focus is on protecting people and giving them the supports they need during these times.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for continuing to do that. And I couldn't agree with you more. Support is definitely what the community needs. And kudos to you. Keep doing that. What we're waiting for you to announce that there's going to be a big, huge party in the Humber River Black Creek. And we're all going to get together again. And we're going to be there for sure. I know that Kenny and I and all the rest of the GBKM crew can't wait to attend that Welcome Back to Society party that you're going to kick off for us.
I can tell you this, your GBKM's everywhere and I see you everywhere. So I know that when things get back to what they are, I'm going to continue to see you in our community, and I'm always happy to talk to you and be here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rakocevic. You are always welcome here in the GBKM studios, and keep up the good work. Listen, before we let you go, is there anything you want to tell the listeners or viewers in regards to maybe getting a hold of you or the NDP, or any initiative you want to get them involved with?
Most definitely, if I can, my office or myself, if we can provide any assistance, every day we're out there, we're making phone calls, checking up on people. And we're certainly returning calls and helping people. My number is 416-743-7272. I don't know if you have the ability to put my email up, but it's trakocevic-co, at ndp.on.ca. I provide regular information on my social media and as well by email updates and all that. Sign up, get on board, and I'm happy to provide information and help people wherever I can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We're going to provide that information for the on-demand listeners, because we get a lot of on-demand listeners and viewers, and so we will provide you with Mr. Rakocevic's email address and telephone number. Reach out to him, offer to volunteer, or maybe just simply call him and tell him good job. And I'm sure that he'll be happy to hear from you. Once again, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today, Tom, and we look forward to seeing you in the community once it opens up again. And until then, we'll say keep up the good fight, and don't forget we're waiting, depending on you to get us out of this and in a strong position like we were prior to going into it.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I love my community. This has been my lifelong home. Thank you to all the listeners who are following the rules, practicing social isolation. You're all part of the solution here, and we're all in it together. Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Have a great day, Tom.
You too. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you for tuning in today to the Ordinary People Show. We're going to wrap up today's show, and we want to thank you for sharing and liking the video. Please ensure that you tell a friend to tell a friend. And if you're watching this on demand, like, share, follow them, give us your comments, and contact Mr. Rakosevic's office personally to offer any support or to inquire about any of the initiatives that he spoke about today. Until next week, I'll see you right back here, same time, same place. Jacqueline Dixon signing off. Have a great week. Cheers.
Standing together as a family.
My name is Kelly. I'm a fan of GBKF.
My name is Pastor Clement Omozane.
I'm Medea, your red carpet host.
I am your host, Ellen Roxon, for the show Talk That Talk here on GBKN FM.
I'm a mother and a teacher. I stand with everyone at this time.
And my name is OJ Egobo.